Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. During the previous night, the Russians conducted another massive drone strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine. There was a swarm of drones, up to 40 drones were flying above Ukraine, trying, as I understand, to discover the Ukraine air defense positions and probably to destroy Ukraine energy facility objects. Later, the Ukrainians stated that as a result of air defense, they managed to bring down 35 drones of 39 that were launched by the Russians. Regarding the effective work of Ukraine air defense, we have received reports about destroyed and damaged energy facilities. Most of the energy facilities were damaged and destroyed in the northern part of Ukraine, in Poltava, Chernigov and Sumy area. For example, in this photo, we can see a fire anomaly in this energy facility object. As you can see, this object were been using by the Ukrainians to transfer the electricity from the western part of Ukraine to the eastern part of Ukraine. The same situation we can see in the city by the name of Konotop. Another energy facility object was another infrastructural object was destroyed or at least damaged. And the same story we can see in the city of Mirgorod in Poltava area, that Ukrainians use this territory to keep and to storage aircrafts that the Ukrainians are using to attack the territory of Russian Federation and the territory of the special military operation. So as you can see, there are still some positions, still some infrastructural energy objects of Ukraine that can be attacked by the Russians, that can lead to further escalation and further difficult and critical situation in the society. As for this situation, we keep receiving updates about mobilization process in Ukraine, terrible mobilization process in Ukraine, and the strikes and resistance. Today we received additional batch of the videos of how the Ukrainian resistance is fighting with the recruiters over the entire territory of Ukraine. In this video we can see few more cars, few more vehicles that were burned by the resistance, by the rebels in the fight with the Zelensky regime. The Ukrainians don't want to serve an army, so they try to at least to make them scary. Maybe this is the operation that was conducted by the Russian special forces, and the Russians are trying to show this as the rebels or as a resistance. Anyway, sooner or later we will understand, we will see this. On the other hand, we start receiving more and more videos with the strikes in Kiev as well. Kiev joined the cities, but as for Kiev, people, women enter the streets with demand to start demobilization and to return soldiers who've been fighting with Russians since the beginning of the special military operation, so for around let's say up to 3 years. Kharkiv, we have also significant number of videos of Ukrainian resistance. Few more cars, few more vehicles were damaged and destroyed by the rebels, and once again these vehicles were being used by the Ukrainians to support and to conduct bloody mobilization. Now let's talk about the line of combat contact. As for Liptsy direction, we haven't received anything. Interesting details are coming from north of Vovchansk. According to the Group of Forces North report, the Ukrainians continue concentration of their forces around the city, around the village of Sinelnikovo. The Ukrainians do really afraid of Russian possible offensive operation from Seversky Donetsk River in direction of the southern outskirts, southern rear of Volchansk, and so that's why the Ukrainians begin concentration of forces. Something tells me that during the next 2-3 weeks, the most important clashes and the most important events are going to come exactly from this area. The Russians may try to attack Sinelnikovo and Tsegelnya with the purpose to cut the supply and support of Ukrainians in the south of Vovchansk, and basically to create a cauldron, because if the Russians are able to capture this village, the Ukrainians will be forced to use very difficult and very not good road for evacuation through Bely Kolodets, which is very long, very difficult, and obviously the Russians will control the road with FPV and Lancet drones. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the central Kupiansk direction. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, established complete control over the village of Pishana, and this morning the pro-Ukrainian and neutral mappers confirmed this this information and they color their own maps. So this is the significant progress of the Russians. The Ukrainians are withdrawing. Yesterday also we discussed the situation in the village of Andreevka. The Russian sources published the video of how they were raising the flag, but the video wasn't geolocated. And today the video was geolocated this morning, let's call it like this, and the Russians during the post, when they were publishing the post, they stated they established control over Andreevka or Rozovka, but when talking about the video, this video of the raising of the Russian flag took place in the village of Jerelne. So that flag also was geolocated. So based on that, we have adjusted the map back again, and Andreevka is still in the gray zone or as a contested area. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Makiivka. The Russian sources reported that as a result of offensive operation, the Ukrainians were forced to abandon their positions in the central Makiivka completely. The Russians crossed Zhiribets River, and currently there are very heavy clashes on the Ukrainian side of the same river, Other Russian groups of forces began moving further in the southern direction, and also there are very heavy clashes in the farms that located in the south of Makiivka. So the Russians are trying to also bloom the Makiivka flower, and this is a very interesting operation. Obviously during the next days we're going to receive additional updates. Siever's direction, we haven't received anything important about the situation on the ground, just the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions all over the line of combat contact, starting from Kremenaya forest, ending in the vicinity of Ivano-Darivka. Ukrainian positions are under very heavy fire, and obviously the Russians are planning to move further. Now let's talk about New York agglomeration, about Donetsk. As you can see, we haven't received anything important, just one video. In this video, for example, we can see the fire in the citadel, that the citadel was covered with fire, and the most important is that the fire is moving further and further in the western and the northwestern direction. So something tells me that most likely the citadel, the Pivnichna citadel, was already captured by the Russians, and probably very soon we start receiving updates that can confirm this piece of news. So the battle, as I understand, for this citadel has ended. I'll remind you that just yesterday we discussed that the southern citadel was also captured by the Russians, yet we haven't received any geolocations that can confirm this, but I believe that this is also correct information. Now let's talk about Western Avdiivka direction. We have lots of very interesting details and reports. Today we have some additional adjustments on map. The Russians managed to improve their positions along Luzovatska. The Russians were moving in the southern direction along this tree line, and according to neutral mappers and pro-Ukraine mappers, the Russians also managed to improve their positions from the southern X and to capture additional positions along these tree lines and along these fortifications. And the sources are saying that during those unexpected attacks, most of them were conducted, and some Ukrainian positions abandoned their positions without letting know to the neighboring forces that they are leaving their areas and their strongholds. And according to information we have, there is a situation that some Ukrainian soldiers appeared in a cauldron in encirclement between these tree lines and these fields. So we don't know the exact number of Ukrainians that were encircled, but of course it's not the thousands, but obviously up to 100 soldiers appeared in a cauldron between Lazavatska and Prohres. And now during the day, or maybe during the previous night, probably they conducted or they're about to conduct attempts to break through the encirclement, and of course as I understand they will suffer significant losses. We can say one thing, that Ukrainians can't stabilize the situation to the west of Avdiivka, to the east of Pokrovsk, and the Russians are moving further and further without seeing any resistance from the Ukrainian side. Now let's move further. Let's talk about Krasnogorovka. Just yesterday we discussed about the Russian significant progress in the central, western and northwestern part, and today this information was confirmed by neutral mappers and by pro-Ukrainian mappers. But as for pro-Ukrainian mappers, they show a little bit less progress than everybody else. Now let's move further. Let's talk about South Donetsk direction. We have additional progress of the Russians along this tree line. Just yesterday we had discussed the Russian attempt to attack. That attack was the video was published by 46th Brigade of Armored Forces of Ukraine. On that video we might see how they repelled this attack, but today we got update that probably the Russians managed to capture additional tree line and 2 strongholds on it. Now let's talk about southern Donetsk, about Ugledar-Vodyane area. The Russians are in the active phase of the storming of this network of the fortifications like Ugledar, South Donbass coal mine number 1, village of Vodyane, and coal mine of Vodyane. During the previous 24 hours we have lots of very interesting video. In this video we can see the Russians FPV drones were attacking the Ukrainian tanks and artillery systems that were hidden between the tree lines, and as a result of attack another artillery system was destroyed. This is very important video because as for this direction the Russians had possibilities to attack Ukraine artillery systems and hidden tanks, vehicles just with lancet or artillery, but now we see that the Russians are able to reach these positions with just regular FPV drones, and the distance is very big and very huge. Possible position of Russian FPV drones were around 10 kilometers, so it's significant distance, obviously. Furthermore, the Russians just yesterday shown us the video how they were FPV droning the Ukrainians inside of this coal mine, and today we got lots of videos, lot of episodes of how the Russians were hunting and destroying Ukrainian equipment in the coal mine in the vicinity of Vodyane. Lots of radars, communication equipment, Starlinks, and other different very expensive and very important equipment were destroyed as a result of Russian FPV drone strikes in the same area. So obviously this is the primary target for the Russians. They will try to capture this territory, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but obviously by the end of the summer the situation on the ground will be changed, and obviously we're gonna change the map for many times by the end of the summer. As for Zaporozhye, considering Kherson direction, we haven't received anything important, just regular activity of FPV drones, of artillery strikes, of hammer strikes, and so on. Now let's talk a bit about the political events. We have important situation from Hungary. The Ukrainians blocked, as we discussed in the previous updates, the supply and support of Hungary using pipelines that go through Ukraine, and according to information we have, Hungary facing fuel crisis as Ukraine turns up hits on the Russian oil supplies. So obviously this will ruin completely the relations between countries, not just between Hungary and Ukraine, but also between Slovakia and Ukraine. So we'll see what is going to be obviously next. As for the United States of America, today we got report that G.D. Vance, the possible vice president, future vice president of United States of America, called Biden to resign now. But as we know, Joe Biden refused. He doesn't care about support, he doesn't care about money, he just wants to be a part of this election process, and he wants to fight, as I understand, with Donald Trump, because it's not just the policy, it's just the personal, something personal. But on the other hand, more and more representatives of the United States Democratic Party see Vice President Kamala Harris as the only possible alternative to Biden in the upcoming presidential elections. That was stated by CNN. And another important events, another batch of important events is coming from the Middle East. During the previous night, the Israeli Air Forces, using significant number of F-15s and F-35, attacked the territory, the fuel depot in Yemen. And as a result of that attack, the distance is very big from Israel furthermore, and it's very difficult to understand the real roads of attack, but the distance is huge, let's say on the strict line around 2,000 kilometers. And as a result of attack, as a result of strike, the Israeli forces managed to destroy the biggest fuel depot inside of the Yemeni. And but the only question I have, why the Israelis were using so many aircraft? Some sources are saying that they were been using up to 20 something, somebody tells even more. So a batch of F-15s with batch of F-35 on one plane that was able to fuel them on the fly. So very interesting, and I don't understand once again why they were using so big number of aircrafts. And later the officials of Israel published very interesting post in the social network. They published the photo of fire on the fuel, and they sent the message that this is a message to all of the Middle East, and that was stated by the speaker of the Israeli Knesset, threatens all neighbors by saying that today's attack on Yemen is a message to the entire Middle East. So another wave of escalation, or just a response to attack that Yemeni conducted on the official buildings in Tel Aviv, we'll see. Obviously, the Yemeni authorities already promised that they will revenge. There's going to be revenge. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.